Hello everyone and welcome back to another Wakelet webinar. Of course, it is the monthly community showcase where we have our amazing ambassadors join us and share how they are using Wakelet, whether that's individually, across their school, department, and of course with students too. So we have an amazing one lined up. We have two brilliant ambassadors in the backstage at the minute that we'll bring on very shortly. But first, of course, please do give them a warm welcome by saying hello in the chat. And let us know where you're joining from, and we'll do a few shout outs. As we always say on our webinars, we just love seeing how global this community truly is. So whether it's morning, midday, or evening, or even night for some people, we do love that you join, and we really appreciate you for joining today as well. So who have we got? We've got Palesh there from Bangladesh. Hey, Palesh. We've got Bangladesh in the house. Vitaly there from Ukraine. Hey, Vitaly. Marit. Hey, Marit. All the way from Finland. Recently met at Bet. Jessica. Hey, Jessica from Texas. Abidi from Tunisia. Katerina from Croatia. Welcome, everybody. We've got Paradis there from Kuwait as well. Thank you all so much for joining. We've got Ryan there in Bradford, Pennsylvania. Thanks for joining, Ryan. Jesus there, Northwestern Spain. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you joining. As always, these showcases are all about our community. And we've got two amazing ambassadors from the community who are here to showcase some of their examples and their collections with you all. So in this, please use their comments as much as possible. Ask questions. We want you to get as much out of this session as possible. And even share your ideas as well. We always say sharing is caring, so this is what it's all about. So use the comments as much as possible. Anything you want me to ask, put it in the comments and we'll go to that. But first, we'll head over to Texas to bring Stephanie onto the screen. So welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. Really appreciate it. Always appreciate when you're on these sessions. And I am actually very intrigued by what you have to show today. I only have a little snapshot from what you shared on the DM and email to us. So I am very excited. I don't know what's coming. So yeah, please do take the stage. It is yours. And I'll be behind the screen if you need anything. And I'll ask some questions from the comments later on.
Cool. Thanks. All right. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for being here, for having me today. I am going to talk about how I create mini databases in the library. And this isn't just constrained to the library. You can do this in your classrooms, pretty much anywhere where you're going to be working with students, even for yourself. So like I said, I am Stephanie Galvan Russell. There we go. I'm a middle school librarian in Austin, Texas. I am in my 13th year in education. This is my 8th year as a librarian and my 5th year as a middle school librarian. And I've really found like this is my favorite place to be. I'm very involved. I do a lot of things, but if you need anything, I think they're going to share the link to my slides, and also my contact information is at the bottom. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer anything once we're done today. So really quickly, I'm going to go over what is a mini database, the benefits of mini databases, how to make one, some best practices, and how they support student learning. So I want to start with, I know you're probably like, what do you mean a mini database? So as a librarian, we work a lot with students and teachers who are wanting to collaborate on research projects with students. And so what that does is when we're teaching them how to do research, we want encourage them to use databases. And those are usually the databases that we in the library pay for them to have access to. Well, what I've learned is that when the students are working in those databases, especially our special populations, our students who might have English as their second language, maybe they have some kind of learning disability, even for our kiddos who just get overwhelmed with information, just like us as adults sometimes do, especially when there's so much to click on and to see. A mini database is where we collect the information that they would normally get in a larger database and curate it down to something that's going to be more accessible. It's going to be easier for them to share and to learn from. So a mini database is exactly what it sounds like. It's where we're taking the information that they would get in a full-size database, and we're curating it to specialized collections, which when you think about it is kind of what Wakelet is. So first I have to start with, how did we get here? So I started with mini databases a couple months ago. Actually, it started last school year when my 8th grade teachers came to me and they said, hey, we want our students to do a research project. And I said, cool, we're going to start in the databases. And here we go. Well, in doing so, I found that those databases weren't quite accessible to all of my students because of the students and the student population that I have at my campus. So my school's demographics are very different than other schools. So my students, we have 46.5% of my students who are either limited English or English is very difficult for them. Maybe they're not fluent, maybe they're fluent in a different language. 46% of my students are bilingual or English is their second language. 8% of my total students are GT, 18% are considered special education, and our reading proficiency is at 32%. I have to say all this because this is why putting my students in a regular database and throwing them kind of to the wolves into a full-size database was not working. I can, teach my heart out and I can share as much as I can and help them as much as I can and guide them as much as I can. But if it's not accessible because there's just so much that they're overwhelmed with information, then it's not going to help them the way I want to. So what I did was I took the information, again, that I really wanted them to focus on and put that into Wakelets to show them what exactly I want them to do. So again, a mini database is a very small, topic-specific collection of resources, such as articles, websites, or videos to guide my students' research. So why did we do this? So it started because I wanted to streamline where my students are getting their information from to get that resource discovery in a way easier that is more than just them clicking and searching and finding articles that might not work. It's going to enhance their research skills because they're still having to use a set of information that I'm giving them and do their own analysis on that for what their own research is going to be. It definitely is going to support your differentiated learning, especially for those special populations that we just talked about. And it makes that research project more manageable for your students. It's also going to make it more manageable for your teachers and for you because there's so much in databases. There's so much if students are just Googling and looking through things that they can easily get overwhelmed. And there can be things in those databases that maybe your teachers haven't seen before. Maybe there's information that they're not completely familiar with. And so we want to make sure that everything is manageable and easy for them. So I'm going to start with 2 examples of mini databases. And normally, if we were in person, I would give you 2 minutes to look through them yourself and kind of decide for yourself which mini database you think is more accessible. But because we're not, I'm going to show you. So the first one is one called Dinosaur Research that I created with some of my students. And you can see through here, all of the resources in this Wakelet are PDFs, and their names are different dinosaurs. So I'm going to click on this first one on the Triceratops, and you'll see it's going to open up a PDF, and here is the information that they would learn in their research. So I'm going to zoom in so that you can see what it says. So it's got the information about the Triceratops, their physical characteristics, and then at the bottom, it's got the citation that they're going to use when they're creating their research. So just like this document, all the other PDFs that you'll see in this Wakelet are the same. So the way I did this was I collected the articles that I wanted the students to use and tried to vary it as much as I could and put it into one Wakelet so that it is still like a database for them. It's still on dinosaurs, but it's still going to be able to help them to find that specific dinosaur that they may want. And it's also going to have that citation at the bottom for them so they can create those citations that they're going to share. So that's the first database, okay? The second database, or mini database, is on scientists and inventors research that I did with another class. This one starts with a PDF. So you'll see it's going to take us to a PDF about Archimedes. And just like the others, it's information that I took from one of our databases and just uploaded the PDF into a Wakelet. But now, when you look through the rest of these links, They're links that now you have to sign into. This is specifically why I create the Wakelet to have PDFs instead of sending it straight to a link, because this is already going to lose my students because they're going to click on that link. First, they don't know what it is. It doesn't have a name. It just says what it is, which is sending them to the EBSCOhost database, and then they have to log in. For my students who are part of those special populations, having to log into something is very anxiety inducing, because even if they know that password, maybe it changed, maybe the password expired, maybe they don't know the password. There's lots of things that can happen. And so instead of having to do this, I collected those PDFs of the articles that I wanted them to use. So it does take a little bit of front loading. It does take a little bit of work ahead of time, but it does make that research much more streamlined and a lot easier for your students. So this is where we would look at those two databases and we would compare and contrast and see which one is easier for them to work with. And in the end, you would find out that the dinosaur one is easier to work with. So the way that I created this and the way that I share it with people to create one is with these steps. So we would sign into Wakelet, create a new collection. You would add your resources that are relevant to the research topic. And I know I'm going fast, but I am going to show you how to do this. And then you would organize it into those categories. So if you were doing something on famous Texas people, then I would have a section for maybe politicians, for musical artists, for different kinds of artists, for chefs, whatever kind of categories you think of, just to make it a little easier so the students aren't just scrolling through everything that you put in that Wakelet. You can also add those descriptions. So just like the difference between where it said EBSCOhost and the specific name of the dinosaur, I like to add that description in there just so it's easier for the students to see. And then I share those Wakelets with the students or with your colleagues or whoever is working on the Wakelet with you or whoever you're sharing it with. And I use that share link that I get from Wakelet. So I'm going to show you how to make one, but there are slides in here if you need help and that guide you through how to do it. So let's start. So first thing I want to remind you of is when we're organizing our resources is you do want to keep it simple. So again, remember the whole point of the mini database is to keep things manageable and to not overwhelm our students. So you want to make sure you have a very manageable number of resources, maybe 3 to 10 depending on your topic. Be clear, provide those concise descriptions, and use multimedia. We know when our students are researching, they're not just looking at articles. They're going to use videos, they're going to use images, we're going to use different things. And so we want to put that in the Wakelet as well, because again, your mini database is supposed to be just a smaller, more condensed version of that bigger database. And consider your special populations. Organize those resources to accommodate the different reading levels. So make sure that you're finding things that aren't all going to be really hard to read. Maybe you use your lower level databases. So for example, I pull research from one of the databases called PebbleGo, which is specifically made for elementary students, but I use those for my kiddos who maybe don't have the same reading level as my 8th graders, or maybe who just need something a little easier to understand. So that's just an example of how you can get that differentiation. So I started by pulling up my databases. I've already created an empty Wakelet so that I can show you how to do this quickly. And I went into our database. Here in Texas, we use something called TextQuest, which is where our databases are provided for us. And I went in to specifically our Britannica Middle School, our Gale in Context one, and then I think this one is one from National Geographic. So I chose my topic as glaciers. And what I'm going to do is just like I showed you before, I'm taking all this information on the glaciers and I'm going to make it a PDF to put into that Wakelet. So I'm going to use this little print button. And instead of actually printing it, I'm going to save it as a PDF. And I'm going to hit save. And you'll see it already puts the name in there. So it says, what are glaciers from Britannica School? And I'm going to save that. So there's my first resource. So now I'm going to go into my Wakelet and I'm going to do my option to upload a file. And I'm going to upload that PDF of what are glaciers. And usually Wakelet is great about importing that title on its own. So Oh, it's taken a second. It's going to think before it adds it. And there it is. So there's my PDF on water glaciers, and it shows where it came from. So that's my first resource. My next one is coming from National Geographic, and this is one that I can see. It's about a specific glacier. This one is on Greenland's melting glacier. And what's cool about this one is I don't have to do print and then save it. I can just click on download, and it's already going to save it as a PDF that you'll see in just a second. It's not showing you my download menu. But so now I'm going to go back to that database, my mini database that I created in Wakelet, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to click on upload file, upload a PDF, and I'm going to find that PDF I just downloaded called Greenland's Melting Glacier. And once again, it's going to think for a second. And then there it is. There's that second one. So the next thing, I know I told you that I want to get these videos in here, right? So sometimes you can right click these. Yep, there it is. I'm going to save that video, and it's going to save it into my computer as a video file. And I'm going to go back to that Wakelet once again, and I'm going to upload a video. And it might take this one a second to think about it because it is a video, but you'll see it is automatic. It's saving already and it's thinking, and that video is going to pop up right there. So again, we're taking those different kinds of multimedia that your students are going to learn from and putting it into where it's going to be accessible for them. And my last one, oh, see, it logged me out. And that's why we don't want the ones that have passwords. So for my last resource, I'm going to use, let's use Gale in Context. And once again, oh, see, this is why we don't do the logins, because your students are already lost. And it does take a second, especially when you have to do these extra steps. So in my Gale in Context, I'm going to put in glaciers. Cool. And I'm going to hit that search button. And so once again, it's going to give me all these things. And so you can see as an adult learner, I can scroll through here and there's just so much that even I as an adult can get overwhelmed. And this is specifically why I started making those mini databases again, because instead of having them scroll through here and having to find what exactly they want or one specific resource, I am going to curate it so that it's easier for them to get to. And you'll see based on this that I find, so I'm going to use this first one. It is coming from the Gale Encyclopedia of Science. So they're still having to use those resources that we know are verified. They're not just Googling things, but I am finding those resources that are going to be good for them. So I'm going to download this one, saves it as a PDF already. Going back to my Wakelet. Once again, I'm going to upload my PDF, and there it is. So now what I would do once this is finished uploading, of course, I would add a little bit more if my students wanted some more. I would probably add a picture or two, but this is good just for my example here. And so now all I have to do is go to share, and I'm going to make sure I have this to where anyone can view it. Copy that link. And now I can share this with whoever I want. So I do like to publish them that way. I don't have to worry about, them not showing up somewhere. I know it's going to be on my profile if my teachers follow my Wakelet collections, but this is really easy to share and just give it to whoever is going to need it. And I'm actually going to put it in the chat in case they want to share it with y'all, in case anyone wants it, but I will add this to my slides for later on. But I hope that this was helpful. Thank y'all so much for staying with me. Just some last second things. So again, we want to remember that our databases are meant to be manageable. They do support your student learning by enhancing those research skills. They encourage that independent learning. So if you are going to have students who are doing one broad topic, maybe you put different resources on their different topics in there. But the thing I love about a mini database is while I can make them as special as I want for my students, you can do the same thing. So definitely take the idea and run with it. Have fun. Oh, hi, James. Thank you. And remember, you can always share these with your students to work together and increase those that collaboration. Sorry, I got hung up on the fact that there's someone from RGV here. Hi, James. That makes me so happy. But I love doing these mini databases backwards with my other students and having them build them instead of doing your typical research project. So That's all I have for y'all. Thank you so much again for having me today. If you need anything, please feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Amazing. Stephanie, thank you so much for sharing that. As Tammy says there, super great use of Wakelet, of course. And the fact that it supports students so well is so amazing to see. I mean, it's very clear to see. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that I took from that was just, I mean, the contrast between the databases and how they look visually to how they then look in Wakelet. I mean, it's a stark difference.
Yeah, it's very streamlined. It keeps you. I always think it keeps me from falling down a rabbit hole like I do in YouTube. So it makes it a little bit easier. Yep.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, because it's twofold, isn't it? One, they get the correct resources that you want them to see, but then also they're a lot more visual and engaging without them getting lost. And yeah, we all know what a rabbit hole's like when we are on other platforms, and students are the same, especially when they're in a class looking at that content, they could get easily lost. And I mean, you clearly showed it as well with the multiple login attempts that pop up and being logged out. I mean, that would distract anyone, never mind a student that's looking to kind of get on with their work.
Yeah, it's exactly what James said in the chat. You take the macro and make it micro. And I love that idea that Ryan said, throw in some fake resources and see if they catch it. That's a fun way to play with them.
That is a fun way, yeah. And I liked what you said about having them build out the mini databases too, because yeah, the amount of critical thinking skills that it'll take to, even with Ryan's idea, kind of look at the resources and understand what is real, what is fake, and what should I be adding into this. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Stephanie, we will pop Stephanie's resources into the chat. I've done the collection already. And if you check the big collection out for the session, you can go and follow Stephanie on Wakelet as well to keep up to date with all of her collections. So again, Stephanie, thank you so much. That was amazing. Okay, right. We'll invite our next ambassador up to the screen. I'm going to head up to Scotland and invite Heather. Hello, Heather. Next ambassador.
Hi.
Hey, so I know there's a bit of lagging issues between myself and you, so share your screen, take it away, take your time, and if you need me, I'll be in the background.
Thanks. Perfect. So yes, sorry, I've not got the best connection, it seems, but hopefully we will get there. So mine's is slightly different. Mine's just a sort of overview on how I use Wakelet in my settings. So I'm a secondary school teacher in Scotland, and I use Wakelet often, most of the time, within my setting. So I'm a subject-based teacher teaching food and nutrition, but I do a lot with additional support needs and digital technology as well. So that all comes into like kind of why I think Wakelet's such a great tool. And I can share this afterwards as well. So why do I use Wakelet? Like, I find it such an incredible tool just for curating resources and having everything in one place. So before I discovered Wakelet, I was one of these people who would be endlessly emailing myself links to documents, trying to remind myself to look at this later on. So I find it so much helpful that everything's just in one place that I can kind of go back to. Especially for me being in that food and nutrition background, I'm forever saving links to recipes, even in my home life as well. I find it in terms of my teaching, it allows it to be much more structured and able to share resources and kind of collate all them with my pupils. So it just prevents having those emails absolutely everywhere, sharing lots of different resources. So a few ideas of how I share the resources with my pupils and with colleagues. So I find it really useful in that when I started and discovered Wakelet, it was around about the time of the pandemic. Obviously, we weren't seeing our pupils. We were having to share a lot of things remotely. And that's when I started using Wakelet to kind of collate everything into our topics and our categories that we break down within our subjects. So for example, I'll open one of these up. for the different subjects that I teach, I have a Wakelet where I upload the resources into each topic area, and that kind of allows pupils to explore lots of different materials, such as PowerPoints, like PDFs of them, videos, lots of resources related to that. And that's just really helpful. I also embed them in their Teams pages so that they can access them much easier. And these are things that I'm happy to share afterwards as well. Hopefully just opening them up. So as well as that, I use Wakelet not as often for like making the lesson materials, and I think that's because obviously now I'm seeing them all face to face, getting a lot more of that interaction. So it's kind of thinking about that flipped sort of learning environment and how pupils are using these resources in their time to enhance their learning. In terms of creating materials, I use it to kind of streamline the information and resources so that if there was a lesson, or if we are in a situation where I'm not seeing the pupils, or for example, if I'm off sick or out of school, then they can still access materials in a sort of structured way so that it's more, they're seeing like the learning materials and working through it step by step. So hopefully, this is where I'm hoping my signal is okay. So this is an example of how I would share materials on Teams with the pupils. So it's broken down into the different topic areas. So for example, one of the ones, if pupils were learning about food allergies, for example, they could go on and there's much more learning materials so they can deepen their learning. They can find out more about each sort of allergy. There's videos, links to PDFs and websites with more information. And it just keeps it streamlined for information for pupils. If they're then revising for like exams or upcoming tests, they've got that information. So that was kind of like how I would share materials with the pupils. In that sort of sense, in terms of like streamlining that information so everything is together. Let me just, sorry, this is where you're going to see my messy Wakelet section. So in terms of like the evaluate questions, this is, for example, in a lesson that I did with pupils. So I wasn't there to actually see the pupils face to face. So I had the instructions, obviously talking through the different types of questions. I then had images and PDFs of the slides, the information that pupils were to access, with examples. I then included videos, and it just makes it easier rather than them looking in a file where they're maybe having to click and open lots of different files. It keeps it all in one place for them. It then had the questions that I wanted pupils to practice and a few reminders. So I just find that it streamlines information and it makes it so much more accessible to pupils. And that's something that I do a lot about, looking at accessibility and inclusion. And I just find it so much helpful to have all the information in one place, making it as easy as possible for pupils to access. And similarly, on the flip side, that's something that I've tried to do for staff as well. So my staff have been, well, we undergo obviously a lot of professional learning. And a part of my role in terms of looking at digital and how we're enhancing that in the school, I wanted to obviously make as much professional learning available to staff as possible. So obviously the way that I chose to do this is through using Wakelet. And obviously we've had face-to-face sessions and given in-person training with our staff. However, I wanted to have all those resources so people can go back, they can look over them in their own time, spend that time digging deeper. So this is an example of one that I've done for digital literacy. And I've broken it down again into kind of key elements of our learning and teaching. So for example, if I go into sharing learning materials, staff maybe were wanting to learn more about how they could use digital to share learning materials. Within that, I've then broken it down further. So how there's a section about creating interactive materials. and I've been able to upload PDFs with descriptions. So really focusing it down. So again, they're not having to search like all of the internet to find good tools. I've kind of narrowed it down for them on key tools that would be beneficial, and then explained why they're beneficial. Again, it's got it for like content curation. So it's really stripping it right back for staff. And then for some of the other sections, for example, curricular tools, if I click on this one, this is then like me selected tools that I know are specific for certain subjects, so staff aren't overwhelmed by everything that's out there. They can then look at why each tool might be useful for their subject. And there's a mixture of links, of PDFs, of lots of different resources. And I just find that narrows it down for staff, much easier for them to access that professional learning. And similar to this digital literacy one, which I'm happy to share, is one that I did on meeting learners' needs, because obviously that's part of like my interests and what I do a lot of as well. And again, it's very similar. So I was in a situation where I was kind of leading the professional learning in terms of meeting learners' needs and specific learning difficulties. So again, I wanted to have everything in one place so that this could be shared on our staff team, can be sent out as an email and saved as a bookmark, for example. The staff can access all these learning materials in one place, and I can regularly update it with new research that's coming out, new resources. And again, they can click on the different aspects to find out more about a certain, like perhaps difficulty or resources that may be beneficial. And this is like what I think is best about Wakelet. Like, it just makes it so easy to like collate and share resources with pupils, with parents, with staff. And I just think it's so much like more accessible for staff and for pupils. And that's kind of the main sort of thing that I use it for, is for sharing those resources, sharing it with colleagues. And obviously by sharing these, they're becoming more aware of Wakelet. They're then using it with their pupils, with their friends and colleagues as well. So it's kind of that trickle down effect. So if I just click stop sharing, hopefully that'll go back. So these are just like the things that I think are most beneficial and how I use it. So hopefully, James, that's just kind of giving people just a wee overview of how I use Wakelet in my day-to-day learning and teaching.
Definitely, Heather. Thank you so much for sharing that. As we mentioned with Heather's collections, we will share them out in the resource collection after this. But yeah, Heather, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, especially with the lag there. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. But Heather, thank you so much. We really appreciate it, especially with the lag there. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to join us. Amazing. Thank you so much, Heather. Okay, that is it. We had two amazing speakers there. Please, as always, as you have been doing, show some love to the speakers there in the resource collection. Please do give them a follow and check out their collections. Hopefully you picked up at least one idea today. I know ideas definitely from Heather and Stephanie there. Absolutely incredible. And I think just going back to kind of the roots of Wakelet in terms of creation, especially what Heather was showing there, just the simplistic way of just having all the resources in one place, not necessarily just for teachers, but also bringing students and parents in the wider community is needed in life at the minute. There's content overload everywhere, and Wakelet can definitely help, as Heather showed there, bringing it all into one place. And I must say, from Heather's collections and spaces there, I absolutely love the visual element of it. I'm super visual, and having those images there, I'm going to assume Canva, but Heather can let us know otherwise. Those images as the cover image were very nice. So Heather, again, thank you so much. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us. I've dropped the certificate link into the chat. You should see that pinned up there. And again, the resources will be shared. If you don't have access to the resources right now, though, don't worry. When you fill in that certificate link, we will share an email with the resources to make sure you have them. Please do share around the webinar link, the YouTube video, with everyone. of your colleagues, give them some ideas on mini databases and curating collections and content for your staff and students. And we will see you on the next webinar. So we'll be on the next community showcase this time next month. For now, though, bye-bye.